This one, yeah. Okay, hello. Let me know if everyone can see my screen.
What the fuck is that?
Feels like I'm in like a real work meeting.
Yo!
I meant to exit
Okay.
the stream and then.
There are children here.
Okay, so feel free to unmute yourself because I prefer to hear like people's I guess like people noises. Otherwise it's like I'm in a room talking about myself. Okay, I'm gonna start then. So hi everyone, I'm Julia. Go to the next slide so we don't have to look at this anymore. I'm Julia. I work at Goldman Sachs as an associate software engineer doing full stack web dev and UX design. I've been working there since 2017 full time, and I interned there in 2016. I went to Stevens from 2013 to I was a 4 out of 4 and got my bachelor's and master's in computer science. I did 3 summer internships while I was there, and my club involvement was PD, secretary, VP, and president for KSA, VP for ESC. And in FAST, I had no positions whatsoever except for an unofficial title of Maui onion flavor in peanut gallery. That's the
Yes.
the real title I had. Okay, that's me. This is a slide that I pulled from when I was running for VP of ESC. And this is to kind of talk about, I guess, like my background with like my involvement on campus. So one of like, I guess like the big things I did when I was at Stevens was kind of building up KSA. Basically how I got started with KSA was I had to run a Korean club in my high school, and then I liked doing like K-pop dance covers and stuff. So then I got involved with Unity. That's how I did PD, and then after that, after that first freshman year Unity, KSA's eboard and basically general body was down to 5 people, which is like pretty hard to imagine, I guess, in like respect to like where they're at now. And then so I put like a bunch I like decided I would kind of like join and then like help out where I could, and then it kind of eventually became more of like a motivating thing for me to get further involved and really make the club succeed. So this is kind of like from start to finish of when I had been on eboard. These were like some of our like shining achievements, and I say our because there was like a lot of people involved in like really making this happen. I had like a lot of really great people helping me on the various years of eboards I had in KSA. So yeah, that's like tripled some of the event numbers for some of the really big ones. So yeah, and then we also did we started Field Day, which is now I think Running Man, and then Holidays of Love and Ramen Night with the Toppings, which I think is now a PC Bong night or something like that. It's like that's kind of like that. With all of this is like kind of how I wanted to start it, because I wanted to talk about how like the place I was coming from when I had exited college. I was kind of like rolling off of like a pretty good high in terms of confidence and like where my achievements were. I feel like if I were to talk about like who I was in college as a senior, I was like a pretty successful person. And then when I had started working full time, all of that fell apart, and I was doing really poorly for the first like year or so of the time I was working, which was something that I never foresaw for myself, because I thought of the skills and the especially like the communication skills and the organizational skills to really succeed working full time. And I think the main reason for this, and like what I wanted to talk about for a majority of the time I'm speaking, is about confidence and building like what exactly, like how to be confident in yourself despite like any of the external factors that you have going on. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be talking about. So I'll start with like being confident and like how you kind of like build the groundwork for the first step to like being confident is reflecting. Let me go through like the brief. So there's reflection, planning, investment, and like these are some like additional things I'll go over after. But for the first stage of this, reflecting, it's really important in how you work. it's very important for you to, at like the start, at the get-go, to define a big picture. And this is really applicable to not just you working on yourself, but you working with other people. Because when you formulate a big picture, you're giving everyone a goal to work towards. And then whenever they do an action, make a goal, or are like working on something, then they can relate that to the big picture, so that you're all always working towards the same thing. So that was like defining your success as a group and making sure that everyone understands like what that success is definitely really important for people who are like joining leadership roles, or just working in like group projects or something, or like working like towards improving yourself. Another thing is like being self-critical. I like, despite like any amount of confidence that you have, it's more than likely that you're going to have things that you're very self-critical about. Knowing what you're not proud of yourself, it's not bad to say that you're not proud of something, like of yourself, because that's just something that you can work towards. So knowing where your improvements are, where things that you do that you know maybe like aren't the best for you or the best for like the full group, it's really important to identify those things, come to terms with them, and then figure out a plan to rectify them. And then the last thing, and this is something that I had to work on a lot when I was a student, was learning to empathize with others and expanding your perspective so that other people can understand what you're thinking, and so that you understand what they're thinking. Being able to level with people that you work with is really crucial to once, like when you start working, because you'll better be able to, you won't be defensive and you won't be offended when like conflict arises, or when like you feel like you're receiving criticism. It'll definitely be helpful for you to understand where people are coming from, so that you can communicate with them more effectively, and then eventually that'll turn into building stronger management skills, to be able to help people improve with you. So yeah, the next thing is planning. So when planning, and this part, I'm sure you've heard it all before, setting tangible goals, making sure that when you like set a goal, it's something that you can and achieve. We call those like measures of success. So you have like your overarching goal, like I want to improve my communication. And my like measure of success is I like spoke up in like this many meetings this week, and like took notes and communicated like this. So something that like you can put a number to. Once you set the goals, you have to update those with measures of success, so that you know whether or not you actually achieve that, and being able to look back on that is going to be really beneficial to you and will help build your confidence to show that you are improving. Next thing is prioritizing your goals. So like, everyone likes to do everything and wants to be good at everything, and unfortunately life doesn't work that way, and you have to choose sometimes like how you determine what part of yourself you're going to work on first. So that is another thing. And then you also have to reconcile with yours. So like we said, like you can't do everything, and sometimes like it feels bad to say like, oh, I like wanted to run for like this eboard position, but I have this other eboard position that I think I could give a lot more to, or contribute like a lot, be more effective with. And even though you can't take like every role, and you can't contribute everywhere you want to, as like an eboard member per se, you can still give a lot by just being someone who is like part of the G. And then my next thing is about investing. So nurturing the skills that you want to be good at. I myself is someone who had a lot of hobbies. And once I started working full time, I dropped a lot of those hobbies, and that really does hurt you in the long run. If you don't nurture the skills that you have and you kind of neglect them, it just becomes stuff every now and again, and then you just feel bad about dropping. So I think being able to like set aside time for yourself to be able to nurture your skills and give yourself like hobbies, or like skills that you want to improve at, is definitely really important, because it helps you yourself build character. And it's also a really good thing for you to like figure out and spend your time locked up in the house in quarantine. So, yeah. So the next thing is knowing your strengths and leveraging those when you're investing, because when you're trying to look for opportunities, you want to make sure that they kind of work on nurturing your strengths as well as like, so that way you can be the best person that you can be in your role. So like for me, specifically when I started working, I was in like a very like technical, purely technical role. I was doing back-end development, which for those of you who aren't familiar is kind of more like you do like the beep boop beep sort of computer-esque operations. You don't do the things that like you see when you're like developing websites or making applications. And not having like being like a very visual person, that was very like unmotivating for me. And I really struggled to get myself to go to work and like really bring like all of my strengths to the forefront. So what I had to do was I had to sit down with my managers, and luckily I had like really great managers. And I had to be very honest with them and tell them like the work that I was doing was not like what I enjoy or what I'm good at. Like naturally, like my talents lie elsewhere. And the second I started doing that, I like my management had given me feedback that they were seeing like exponential improvement in like the work that I was turning out. And that's really how I got out of the funk that I was in from like starting to work and like losing my confidence and like kind of losing contact with people that I had been speaking to before. And like for those like that's happening now, like you're not able to talk to everyone that you would like to all the time. You can't have like in-person contact with them. And I think like once you transition, like you will feel lonely in those moments, and that's like to be expected, but like you will find a lot of fulfillment if you spend some of that time like working on yourself in balance with like just kind of like, you know, messaging people and being like, hey, how are you doing? You'll catch up with people slowly, but now that you are alone, it's very good to kind of like, it's a very good time to kind of like take a look at yourself and then just see if there's anything that you can slowly work. So yeah. Okay. Let's see. So my last couple points here are about defining success, how you kind of pursue like the goals and the investments that you make here. So being accountable is something that is super important for everyone. Don't rely on others to push you forward. So like something that I do when I like don't want to do something is I'll say like, hey, can you remind me to do this thing? Or like I'll tell someone like, hey, like can you like do this thing with me, because if you don't do this thing with me, I'm never going to be able to do it. And setting up those type of expectations is setting yourself up to fail quickly, because you really like in terms of like self-improvement, you really can't rely on anyone but yourself. You can rely on other people for support, like definitely like confide in people when you're trying to improve yourself and you're trying to work on something, but don't put responsibility on other people for your own improvements. The next thing is like doing what you say you're going to do. It's very easy to make a lot of excuses, and sometimes you're in a position where you feel like you need to make excuses for not being able to do something. But if you put your words into actions, you'll like the main thing that really like gets me with that is that I don't have to feel guilt anymore of saying I said I was going to do something and then not doing it. That's one of the things that like at least personally really bothers me, and it's one of those things that will like eat away at me, and then that's when I like fall into like a depressive episode and like don't want to speak to anyone, and like it's just like it's a bad mix. So I think that's like I can say is like start with small steps, like but always do what you say you're going to do, and like this is in balance with saying you're going to do less. Don't overcommit yourself if you can help it. Even though I'm sure a lot of us have a tendency to do that, myself included. My next thing is being present and taking up space. It's really important for you to be vocal about your strengths and like what things that you can do and what you can help with. It's also like important to be self-sufficient when you're like setting up for events or when you're figuring out plans for like what you're going to do for like the next eboard year or something. It's really important for you to speak up and be heard. I've been getting that feedback that I don't speak up enough since I interned with Goldman, and that's at work. And I'm a pretty loud person, so you can never speak up enough. Is like what I'm trying to say. And then my last one, and this is the one that I think like I really got the most out of emotionally, was bringing others up with you. So I wanted to tell a little story about how I got involved with FAST. So after Unity, we do Accepted Students Day. So Accepted Students Day, the day after my freshman Unity, KSA had a table next to FAST's table. And Steve G, I don't know how many of you know Steve G, but he's a saint. He was at the FAST table. And like I like very introverted with people I don't know and among with. So I was like really bad at recruiting people, and like majority of our table was very bad at recruiting people. But then I'm sure most of you know that FAST is amazing at recruiting people. We have a lot of key people who are very good at that because their social skills are just like out of this fucking world. And Steve G was one of them. What was happening was they were like, people were bringing people to FAST table. They were getting them to sign up. They were like cheering people on. And then as soon as they would like finish cheering them on for signing up for FAST, they would push them towards our table. They'd be like, oh, hey, do you know like this club, KSA, you should sign up for them too. It was such a small thing, I guess, but it was something that impacted me a lot. I felt so extremely grateful in that moment. It really like gave me a very strong impression of like what FAST was from like before I was even active or before I had even. So yeah, that's kind of if you do small things like that and you look for other opportunities, once you work on yourself and you can start applying these same principles to helping other people, you'll definitely see a return on those investments. Okay, yeah. All right. This is. I'll go through this one really quickly. This is just my really quick tips for leadership that I wanted to bring up. So one of them we already went over was like setting the big picture, making sure that everyone gets it and they agree. When I was president of KSA, even VP, I like kept saying like I had this big picture in my mind of like what we were doing, and then especially like for events, I'd be like, oh, we can like set up the event this way, do this thing. But it was like so much all at once. No one understood what I was thinking. So you do need to slow down for other people to catch up and understand your vision sometimes. Try not to tunnel into one thing and then assume everyone will follow. The next thing is leading by example. If you tell someone to do something, you're not going to do it. Everyone knows that looks bad. So like, just don't do it. Next thing is giving people opportunities. So you want to make sure that like when you're leading like a group, it's really difficult to do everything on your own. I've definitely been there, and I grew a lot from it, but it was really bad. And once you start working full time, if like when someone asks you what was the time when like you had issues working in a group, and you say, oh, I just did it all myself, like that's not the answer they want. And if you give that answer, your interview's over. So you're gonna have to practice this in real life. Learn to work with people no matter how difficult it is. Like be confrontational, give constructive criticism when you see that people aren't working well with you. And like if you give them opportunities to improve and like get things done, they'll slowly come around to like being helpful and like working together with you. And then my last one is when you're leading people, don't manage people. And that kind of ties into all the points that I had set before. Don't just like tell people what to do. Make sure that they're self-sufficient and can figure out what they should be doing, and just kind of check in with them, so that like if they do need guidance, then you are guiding them. So yeah, that's like the last thing I want. Sorry, that ended up being like a huge like 20-minute spiel. But if anyone has any questions, you can ask them now.
Before any questions, let's give Julia a round of applause for a really good talk with a lot of really good content.
Let's go!
I I believe Humphrey and/or Ria is going to lead the questions. So the queue and whoever wants to volunteer no mic.
Word. So essentially if you guys have any questions, put it in no mic, and then we're just gonna go by asking them. And if there's a repeat, we'll obviously just skip it, and then we'll go like first come first serve. So being the host, I guess I'll ask the first question. Like as you showed us in like the previous slide, and kind of like what you're known for is like reviving KSA from being a very small like 5-person club into something very big. And it's you could kind of see it today where like the club right now is doing like very well on its own, and there's a lot of club members and everything, and it's grown from like the very small roots it had. So what do you think was the kind of the biggest challenges you had to face, like kind of building the club up from like the ground, and also like what was like the biggest motivating factor?
So one of the biggest conflicts I had when I was doing KSA was people not being on the same page of like what our goals were. I'm sure most people who are my age know what I'm talking about, but I had like a big conflict with someone regarding like what exactly KSA was supposed to be there for. In my mind, KSA was supposed to be this grandiose club that was supposed to introduce people to Korean culture beyond like what is K-pop and like what is like kimbap, like we were supposed to be a safe space for people of like interests to be able to explore those interests and learn more while pushing them further outside of their comfort zone to explore Korean culture outside of those boundaries. But at the same time, it was also supposed to be like a safe space for people to build friendships and to like gain like experiences and memories. And it's really hard to balance those two things, and if you want to have one or the other, you kind of need to focus a lot on one or the other. So the like part of my eboard wanted like one thing, and then I wanted another, and we ended up having like a huge argument about it, but we talked it out, and I learned a lot from that conversation. I realized how little I was really focusing on the people aspect of like running a club, and like that was kind of the whole point of this. Really, like you want to expose. Like I was looking at the big picture of like the school, like targeting the school and like all the people who like have no fucking idea what Korean people are and think they're Chinese, or like, but like it's not nurturing the people who are in the club, building like family relationships like we kind of do have here. So yeah, that was that was like a huge challenge, but really communication was the thing that solved that. And like even though I disagreed with a lot of things, I did listen. I've even gone back like again to read those that we've exchanged, and I do see a lot of valid points that were brought up there, and I learned a lot. So yeah, the encouraging things, the most encouraging people going up to you in an event and saying like, oh my god, that was so much fun, like, and then seeing the same people come to every single event after that. That was like people who like I had never seen before, had very little contact with, like coming up to us and like telling us like what a good job. Like that was really impactful and like it motivated a lot. So
Thank you. I think the next question is for Joan. So if Joan wants to unmute her mic and say it.
I think it was George.
Oh, George. Oh, it is.
George,
So
are
you
you
pull
good
this
now?
question. She asks, why is Julia so cool?
She's not.
I'm not. I gotta go back.
Who said that? Who said that? Whoever said that, expose yourself in chat right now.
Paula.
I've mispronounced her name ever since I was a freshman. It's okay.
Are you? Oh,
That's
the only one in this club that still calls you JJ, George.
That's true.
Wait, JJ?
No.
Oh gosh.
Nope.
Jordan, if you call me that shit one more time, you're banned from the goddamn server.
Yo, hold on. Ah,
Open
shit.
that can of worms.
But
That photo's not photoshopped.
Yeah, completely
That's what she
natural.
looks like.
The way that the shore curves, that was just a sculpture in the back.
Sandcastle,
Gravity
like,
and
right behind.
the weight.
It is your butt that you had to.
Julia, Caleb's wondering, is it true that you once described your involvement with KSA as this cock came crawling out of my vagina?
I said I birthed it out of my vagina.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I said that multiple times, yes.
Damn.
I was sick for 2 years running that club, like physically ill.
Right.
Oh, boy.
Hi, Julia.
Hello, hi.
Can we have that on a shirt?
I
Maybe.
wear that, yeah.
We'll consider it for next year's Fast Apparel.
Mhm.
Georgia, you asking your question?
Oh yeah, so my question is, what's the wildest story you have from Stevens? And or if you can't think of one, can you expose one of the current upperclassmen with one of their shitty freshmen?
I have one that I think is kind of interesting. So when was this sophomore or junior year? I don't remember. This might have been sophomore year. We got Clara C to do a concert at Stevens. And when that was happening, Tech Fest, I think, was like that's like the biggest event that like EC is supposed to put on. I don't know if they still do it because it just gets worse and worse every year. But
They do.
I,
We had to see
okay.
McCartney last year.
Wow, really? Oh my god!
We really
I think-
almost got Rich Brian. Oh my god.
Wow!
No way.
Oh shit!
No, we were supposed to have Fetty Wap this year.
Really? Oh my god. Okay, I wish that was who we. I don't remember who was T-Pain the same year. Or was it
Yeah,
the year
T-Pain.
after?
Yeah, it was T-Pain.
Oh, okay. Okay. So that was happening. They ended up like so we started.
Wait, no, that
setting
wasn't
up for the
T-Pain. That was
Claire C
that
event.
other one.
It was the one.
It was the one
no.
Paul liked.
What? What was the?
Paula, what's that tech fest you went to?
I only did T-Pain was our senior year.
It was the one before.
Damn.
T-Pain was during
No,
Barrios
it was
Fiesta.
Yo, we really tried to get T-Pain to come to your barrios.
There was Chainsmokers during our freshman year too.
Yeah,
It
but
was,
that was
it was the
before
year
they had
after
songs.
Chainsmokers.
Before,
It was
yeah.
after
It was after
Chainsmokers.
Chainsmokers. It was that rap duo.
Oh, I get you.
I don't remember. It's fine. It's fine. It was like some like rap duo. I didn't know who they were. So we had started planning for Clara C in December of the year before. The event was happening in the following October. We had the date set and everything. Like we had to fly her in to do this event. And because of weather, Tech Fest ended up being canceled and moved to the same date and time as that Clara C concert. We were expecting like a pretty like decent turnout for the event, and I was like really, really upset, and I felt very disrespected by like the people who manage like EC and student life because of it, because they just kind of like decided to do it, and then I was like, well, this is like a thriving club that like we're investing a lot of time and effort into like making something of this club, and you're just kind of like shitting on it and like doing whatever you want because you can, because you only care about and prioritize certain things. Like you could have picked any other weekend. So I went up to student lives, and then I threw some words at some people.
What words?
up there.
What words? What words?
Julia.
Yo, what are the words?
They were words. There were some eyes rolled and some scoffs thrown. And I ended up like I was like really upset after that happened, and then I ended up writing like a 500-word essay to D. Nielsen about how much he disrespects non-Greek life organizations and how we do his job for them. So they should give us a little bit more respect. That's
Bam.
Oh my god.
Damn. That's entirely in character, but I'm still sorry. I don't know.
That's some good
Wait.
sauce.
Julia, what came out of that?
He said, "Okay, got it." Or no, he said, "Okay, thanks."
Yeah, that's
Damn!
Oh my
god.
Progress.
Oh my god.
remember
Jermansky
Clara
hated
C-
me on saying that.
Oh.
Sorry, what?
Oh, I remember like when Clara C got on stage, she was like, "Yo, what's happening in the parking lot? I'm about to go over there." Like,
What the?
Oh, also the performance was Chitty Bang.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Bang is cool.
Okay, I remember that.
Yeah, that's who it was.
Hi, Ruth.
Hi.
I'll ask my question next.
Yeah, that answers my question. Thank you.
First question?
It's a little bit on the board.
You can answer the second question if you want, or we can
Oh,
save it
wait.
for later. I don't want to take too much time.
Wait,
There are a
what
lot
was the
of other
second
questions,
question?
too.
Sorry. My bad.
I think Joan was next, and then it's Hassan.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Joan has a AP
me?
US
What?
history prompt for you.
Oh, no. I didn't take that one.
It's a Miss PI question.
Joan, do you want to read it?
Yeah, I'll read it. So, I know you talked
Oh, wait, I
about
think
getting into
I
fun.
need to unmute Joan first.
Wait, I'm
we
in
can
mute.
hear you.
Oh, I
Alright,
can
no,
hear her.
you're good. You're good.
Dude, I think you muted Joan. Personally.
Yeah, what are you doing, George? What are you doing?
Sorry, John. I'm stealing my spotlight. So I know you talked about getting into funk, especially when you reached your first year at your job, and that's probably something that a lot of people, especially in this group we're dealing right now, especially with these times, whether that's academics or their career. So how did you deal with getting into a funk, making changes to get out of it, and then finding yourself into a funk once again? And then how did you hold yourself accountable so that you didn't fall into the same habits in the first place?
So my thing was, I knew that my problem was confidence. That was like very obvious, like what the issue was. And I think for majority of people, once they start working, it's definitely like a confidence problem, like an imposter syndrome that they feel. A lot of you have kind of heard that buzzword thrown around. But basically, you just feel inadequate in the role that you were given, even though you had achieved whatever opportunity you found yourself in. And I kind of saw what my lack of confidence was doing to me. So what I ended up doing was I always related myself back to the person that I wanted to be. So in everything that I was doing and all my day-to-day tasks, even the really small things, the way I would communicate in emails, the way that I would plan before I would speak up in daily stand-up meetings. It was a process. I had to think about the person that I wanted to come off as at work. And then I had to write myself a script of what I would say, and then rewrite it over and over again until I could end up doing that without the rehearsal. That was a really good way for me to kind of get out of the communication issues that I was having, and it allowed me to speak a lot more confidently in meetings. And just because of the way that I was coming off was more confident, I felt a lot better about myself. So one of the things that I mentioned was creating a big picture. So when you're working on yourself, the big picture that you are working on is the person that you want. So assessing the things that you do that you're not proud of. If that's going to be things that don't fit into that big picture. So the more that you see what the things you don't like about yourself are affecting you and your image of yourself, I think that was my motivation for not doing it anymore.
Thank you.
So I think Asa has another question, but when I said that last time, he said what? So I don't think he does.
I mean, it was just do you still have that quote list that you compiled over the years? I know you presented it at Barrios, your
Yeah.
Barrios.
That shit was crazy.
Yeah.
No.
Jesus.
Oh, wait.
My man,
Eric Vargas, Mikey.
Oh my god.
Brew.
Okay, I think I'm done. I think that's what.
There's one last question from Jordan if he wants to ask it.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Julia. Okay.
Hello.
What do you think is the most important part in maintaining the family vibes as a general body member and/or eboard member?
Ooh.
Oh.
What a shit.
Always be proactive in trying to help people. It's so I guess part of the way I got really close with my like year was they were so like selfless and giving. They were always trying to help, like because they always saw, I guess, like how hard I was like trying to do things. I bonded with them a lot through like setting up events and like kind of like figuring out logistics, like spending a lot of time with them. So try to spend time with people. Go out of your way to talk to them, especially now. You can't meet in person. And then always see if you can help, but try to also keep your own well-being in mind because like sometimes you can like give too much of yourself, and then you just kind of like end up sick for 2 years, and that's how it ends up. So yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, someone wanna close out? That's all I got.
Thank you, Julia, for both a really good presentation and also some real crazy fucking receipts that I did not think I would receive in my lifetime. I think we all learned something tonight. So yeah, thank you for coming through and volunteering your time. Let's get one last round of applause.
Yay!
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for listening to me rant.
Hey, Julia. Thank you.
Okay.
Now to GBM number 14. Yeah. That's about it. You guys are welcome to stay and hang out if you want to, but there are people who have work tomorrow. So you are welcome to dip.
Thanks to all the alumni who came out.
Goodbye.
Yes,
Goodbye.